The crystal wine glasses chimed with a clear, delicate ring that seemed to linger in the atmosphere of the dimly lit dining room. My fingers shook ever so slightly as I positioned them on the spotless white linen, measuring exactly 2 inches from the table's edge, adhering strictly to Mr. Moretti's demands. The restaurant was vacant now, the final patrons having departed 20 minutes prior, yet we were already setting the stage for tomorrow's exclusive function. It was some corporate gathering that had the entire staff feeling anxious. Elena, ensure those glasses are flawless. Mr. Moretti's clientele accepts nothing short of perfection. Marco, the floor manager, loomed behind me, his exhalations carrying the scent of tobacco and the cheap coffee he consumed by the gallon. I acknowledged him with a nod without raising my eyes. After 3 years at Rososcuro, I understood the standards better than anyone. I had climbed the ladder from dishwasher to waitress, and I wasn't about to let anyone question my commitment. They are perfect, I murmured, aligning the final glass. My black uniform felt damp with perspiration under the arms despite the restaurant's aggressive air conditioning. Something about tomorrow's event had everyone walking on eggshells. Who is actually coming tomorrow? I asked, attempting to sound casual as I stood upright, my lower back throbbing from bending over tables for the last hour. Marco's eyes scanned the empty restaurant before he leaned in closer. Vittorio Castellano. And apparently, he specifically requested this venue. My heart seized in my chest, and the room seemed to tilt on its axis. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself, hoping Marco wouldn't notice how the color had drained from my face. The Vittorio Castellano, I whispered, though I knew the answer. There was only one Vittorio Castellano in Chicago. The man whose name was spoken in hushed tones. The man who owned half the city without his name appearing on a single deed. The man who had no idea he had a 5-year-old daughter with my eyes and his stubborn chin. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Marco frowned, studying my face. Just tired, I managed, forcing a smile. Long shift. Marco grunted, apparently satisfied with my explanation. Well, get some rest tonight. Tomorrow will be all hands on deck. And I need you sharp. Castellano tips well, but is also known for having people disappear over a wrong wine pairing. He was exaggerating, but not by much. The rumors about Vittorio were numerous and varied, but they all shared one common thread: cross him, and you would regret it. I had known this 6 years ago when I had met him at his nephew's wedding. I had been 22, working as a server for the catering company, bright-eyed and naive despite my hardscrabble upbringing. And he had been magnetic. I finished my shift in a daze, muscle memory carrying me through the closing duties while my mind raced with panic. 6 years ago, I had spent 3 intoxicating months as Vittorio Castellano's mistress before discovering I was pregnant. And when I had realized what kind of life awaited any child born into his world, I had done what I thought was best. I disappeared, telling him through a tear-soaked phone call that I'd lost the baby before changing my number and moving to the other side of the city. For 6 years, I had lived with the lie. For 6 years, I had raised Sophia alone, working double shifts and sleeping on a pull-out couch in our tiny one-bedroom apartment so she could have the actual bedroom. For 6 years, I had convinced myself that Vittorio had forgotten me, just another brief diversion in a life full of power, luxury, and danger. And tomorrow, he would walk into this restaurant, and I would have to serve him wine and pretend we were strangers. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned on the lumpy pull-out couch, my mind cycling through scenarios, each worse than the last. By the time my alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., my eyes were gritty and my head pounded. "Mommy!" Sophia's sleepy voice called from the bedroom doorway. She stood there in her favorite unicorn pajamas, dark curls wild around her heart-shaped face. Vittorio's face in miniature. "Hey, sweetheart." I forced brightness into my voice as I padded over to her. "You're up early." She rubbed her eyes with small fists. "I had a dream about Daddy." My heart stuttered. "What do you mean? What kind of dream?" Sophia shrugged, the guileless gesture of a child who doesn't understand the weight of her words. "I don't know. He was tall and he picked me up really high." She stretched her arms toward the ceiling. "Up to the clouds." I swallowed hard. Sophia knew her father wasn't in the picture. I told her he had to go away before she was born, that he lived far away now. It wasn't entirely a lie. The emotional distance between the Vittorio I'd known and the man he truly was stretched wider than any physical miles. That sounds like a nice dream, I managed. Come on, let's get you ready. Mrs. Patel is watching you today, remember? The morning passed in a blur of routine tasks. Braiding Sophia's hair, making her favorite peanut butter toast cut into triangles, no crusts, Mommy packing her backpack with the coloring books and crayons she'd need for the day at our neighbor's apartment. All the while, dread pooled in my stomach like lead. Be good for Mrs. Patel, I told Sophia as I dropped her off, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I might be home late tonight because of the special dinner, she asked, already eyeing Mrs. Patel's granddaughter, who was setting up a board game on the living room floor. That's right, I said. Very important customers. Mrs. Patel, a kindly widow who had become something of a surrogate grandmother to Sophia, gave me a knowing nod. Don't worry, Elena. We'll be fine. You just focus on earning those big tips. If only big tips were my biggest concern. The restaurant hummed with tense energy as the staff prepared for the evening ahead. Fresh flowers had been delivered, blood-red roses and white lilies arranged in crystal vases that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The private dining room gleamed under the chandeliers, the table set for 12 with the finest china and silver. Elena. Marco snapped his fingers in front of my face. Focus. I'm assigning sections and you're on the private dining room. My stomach dropped. The private room? But Maria usually handles the VIPs. And Maria called in sick. Food poisoning. His eyes narrowed. Unless you don't think you can handle it. I could feel the eyes of the other servers on me. This was the most lucrative assignment. The tips alone could cover 2 months of Sophia's daycare, and turning it down would raise questions I couldn't answer. No, I can handle it, I said, straightening my shoulders. Of course, I can. Good. They arrive at 8. The wine is already decanting in the cellar. Brunello for the table and a special bottle of Barolo for Castellano himself. Don't mix them up. The hours seemed to both crawl and race by. I found myself obsessively checking my appearance in the bathroom mirror. The severe black dress that was our uniform suddenly seemed too tight, too revealing. I'd pulled my honey brown hair back into a neat bun, applied minimal makeup to highlight my green eyes, Sophia's eyes, my mother's eyes, but nothing could hide the paleness of my skin or the tension in my jaw. At 7:45, I took my position in the private dining room, hands clasped behind my back, trying to control my breathing as I listened to the muted sounds of the first arrivals in the main restaurant. Car doors slamming outside, the low murmur of masculine voices, the distinctive click of expensive shoes on marble. And then the door to the private dining room swung open, and time seemed to stop. He entered first, as befitted his status. 6 years had barely touched him. His black hair was still thick, though now threaded with distinguished silver at the temples. His face remained handsome in that stern, almost brutal way that had always made my breath catch. The strong jaw now sporting a neatly trimmed beard, the aquiline nose, the dark eyes that missed nothing. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit with a crisp white shirt and a blood-red tie. The only adornment was a gold signet ring on his right hand. Vittorio Castellano filled the room with his presence just as he always had. Behind him filed in his entourage. Men in expensive suits, their eyes constantly scanning the room, hands never far from the bulges beneath their jackets. I recognized a few faces from years ago, though I doubted they would remember the waitress who had briefly caught their boss's attention. I kept my eyes downcast, the perfect picture of a deferential server. But I could feel the weight of his gaze sweeping the room. For one terrible moment, I thought he might recognize me immediately. But he moved to the head of the table without pause, his men arranging themselves in what was clearly a predetermined order of importance. Good evening, gentlemen, I said, my voice remarkably steady despite the thundering of my heart. Welcome to Rososcuro. May I bring you the wine while you settle in? There was a murmur of assent, but I didn't dare look directly at Vittorio. Instead, I moved to the sideboard where the wine awaited, my hands surprisingly steady as I poured the rich red liquid into the waiting glasses. As I began to circle the table, placing each glass with precision, I could feel Vittorio's attention sharpening. I saved his for last, setting down the special Barolo with my eyes fixed on the tablecloth. "Thank you," he said, his voice a deep rumble that sent electricity down my spine. The same voice that had once whispered passionate promises in my ear. The same voice that had argued with me over baby names in another lifetime, not knowing the conversation was purely hypothetical on my part. I made the mistake of looking up, and our eyes met. For a heartbeat, there was nothing, no recognition, just the polite dismissal of a powerful man acknowledging a servant. Then his eyes narrowed infinitesimally, his head tilting slightly as he studied my face. I watched the subtle shift of expressions, confusion, disbelief, and then something darker, more dangerous. "Do I know you?" he asked, his voice cutting through the conversations around the table, silencing them instantly. My throat closed up. My carefully rehearsed denial died on my lips as his gaze intensified, stripping away the years, the carefully constructed walls, the lies. "Elena," he said, and the single word dropped into the silence like a stone into a still pond. The wine glass slipped from my suddenly nerveless fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor in a spray of crimson liquid that splashed across my shoes and the hem of my dress. The crash seemed to echo in the frozen silence of the room. And in that moment, as Vittorio Castellano rose slowly to his feet, his dark eyes never leaving mine, I knew with absolute certainty that my carefully constructed life was about to shatter just as completely as that glass. "Everyone out," Vittorio said, his voice deceptively soft. The command rippled through the room like an electric current. Chairs scraped against the floor as his men stood without question or protest. Within seconds, they had filed out of the room, closing the door behind them with a gentle click that somehow sounded as final as a prison gate slamming shut. I remained frozen, red wine seeping into my shoes, the shards of broken glass glittering at my feet like tiny daggers. My gaze darted to the door, a futile instinct, as two of his largest men now undoubtedly stood guard on the other side. He stood sentinel just beyond the entrance. 6 years, Vittorio stated, pacing around the table with calculated strides, his motions smooth and restrained, reminiscent of a stalking predator. 6 years of silence, and I find you pouring wine in my preferred dining establishment. He halted a mere few feet from where I stood. "How long have you been employed here, Elena?" The manner in which he pronounced my name, part tenderness and part indictment, caused a prickling sensation across my skin. 3 years, I whispered, despising the waver in my tone. 3 years, he echoed, his Italian inflection becoming heavier, a sure sign of his rising anger. "And during that entire duration, it never crossed your mind to inform me that you were alive and residing in my city, that you had merely vanished." I compelled myself to hold his stare, although it felt akin to gazing into the center of a tempest. "It wasn't your city when I began working here. This district belonged to the gallows back then." A muscle feathered in his jaw, the solitary indication that my statement had struck home. The expansion of Castellano interests into this sector of Chicago had been a recent development. And, according to the whispers in the neighborhood, a violent one. "You were always perceptive," he murmured, his gaze never wavering from mine. When he reached into the pocket of his jacket, I flinched on instinct, a reflex that caused his expression to dim. He did not remove a weapon, but rather a mobile phone. "Clean up this disaster," he instructed into the device before slipping it back away. "We need to converse, but not in this place." "I am on the clock," I objected feebly. "I cannot simply depart in the middle of my shift." His laughter was brief and devoid of amusement. "I believe your employer will be understanding. After all, I am now the owner of this restaurant." My blood turned to ice. "Since when?" "Since about." He consulted his wristwatch, a sophisticated timepiece that likely exceeded my yearly earnings in value. 4 hours ago. The paperwork was concluded this afternoon. The fragments aligned in my mind with nauseating precision. The abrupt shift in management, the exclusive dinner reservation, the anxiety that had permeated the staff all day. It had not been merely a standard business gathering. It had been a victory lap for an acquisition. And it could not be a coincidence. "You knew I was working here," I stated, the accusation escaping before I could check it. Something sparked in his obsidian eyes. Perhaps triumph at having elicited an emotional reaction. I make it my priority to know everything occurring within my territory, Elena, including the identity of the person serving the wine. The door swung open before I could offer a retort, and a young waiter bustled in with cleaning gear, his eyes wide with trepidation as he neared the shattered glass, studiously avoiding eye contact with either of us. "My vehicle is waiting at the curb," Vittorio announced, his inflection making it evident this was a command, not an inquiry. "I will grant you 2 minutes to gather your belongings." I knew I ought to decline, to stand my ground about finishing my work and returning to my daughter, yet the mere mention of Sophia sent a renewed surge of terror through me. If Vittorio had located me with such ease, what other information might he possess? "Fine," I yielded, stepping gingerly over the shards on the floor. 2 minutes. Inside the employee locker room, my hands trembled so violently I could scarcely manipulate the combination lock. My thoughts sprinted through various alternatives, each more hopeless than the previous. I could bolt, grab my essentials, sneak out the rear exit, pick up Sophia from Mrs. Patel, and flee the metropolis. But how far would we actually get? Vittorio's reach was extensive, his resources appeared infinite, and his pride was mythical. He would not simply permit me to vanish a second time. Furthermore, there was a fragment of me, a fragment I loathed for its fragility, that recalled the sensation of being held in his arms, of being the sole focus of that searing attention and order, the part of me that still woke from dreams of him, breathless and longing. I swapped my wine-splattered uniform for the attire I had arrived in. Faded denim, a modest blouse, and a thin jacket to ward off the evening chill. It was nothing resembling the couture gowns and jewelry he had once draped me in during our fleeting time together. I gazed at my reflection in the tiny mirror mounted in my locker, noting the dark circles beneath my eyes and the strain etched into my features. "Mommy loves you, Sophia," I whispered, as if my daughter could somehow receive the message. "Every action I have ever taken was to ensure your safety." Outdoors, a glossy black Bentley idled by the sidewalk, its windows tinted to total obscurity. A towering figure in a dark suit held the rear door open as I drew near, his face devoid of emotion. I recognized him faintly. Antonio, one of Vittorio's most reliable sentries. "Miss Romano," he greeted with a curt nod. The formality was nearly laughable considering the last time we had crossed paths, he had been feigning ignorance while Vittorio and I were intimate in the backseat of this very automobile. The interior of the Bentley was precisely as I recalled. Supple leather seats the color of butter, the understated aroma of high-end cologne and authority. Vittorio was seated with his back to the chauffeur, leaving me no option but to sit opposite him, our knees almost brushing in the confined space. "You cut your hair," he noted as the vehicle pulled away from the curb, his eyes cataloguing the alterations in my presentation. My hair, which once cascaded to the middle of my back, now barely grazed my shoulders. A pragmatic decision for a single mother with scant time for grooming. "It has been 6 years, I stated, my voice gaining stability now that we were distanced from the restaurant, my indignation beginning to override my fright. "People change. Some things change," he concurred, his gaze deepening. "Others remain precisely as they were." I averted my eyes, looking out the tinted glass at the city lights smearing past. "Where are you taking me?" "To a location where we can speak in private." "I need to be home by midnight," I insisted, thinking of Mrs. Patel, who would eventually need to rest. And of Sophia, who occasionally woke from bad dreams crying out for me. Vittorio arched a brow. "A hot date." The offhand query held an undercurrent of possessiveness that sent a tremor down my spine. "The babysitter," I answered without forethought, then instantly rued the admission as his expression honed with curiosity. "Babysitter," he repeated softly. "So, there is someone waiting for you at your residence." I remained silent, mentally cursing my loose tongue. The car continued its fluid voyage through the city, eventually merging onto Lakeshore Drive. The murky waters of Lake Michigan were visible in glimpses between the high-rises. "You told me you lost our child," Vittorio said at last, his voice perilously low. "You called me weeping so hysterically I could barely comprehend your words, claiming there had been complications, that the baby was gone, and then you vanished." I forced myself to meet his stare, to uphold the fabrication that had shielded Sophia for 5 years. That is what occurred. Is it? His hand darted out abruptly, fingers encircling my wrist with gentle yet unyielding pressure. Your pulse is hammering, Elena. It always did that when you lied to me. Like the instance you claimed to have misplaced the necklace I gifted you, when in reality you had pawned it to cover your mother's medical expenses. I attempted to recoil, but his grip secured. That was different. Was it? His thumb grazed the tender skin on the inner side of my wrist. A casual intimacy that caused my breath to catch despite my resistance. You have always been resourceful, Elena. It is one of the traits I admired in you. Your resolve to survive, to look after your own. The vehicle decelerated, turning into the circular driveway of a looming skyscraper overlooking the water, Vittorio's penthouse, where I had spent those 3 whirlwind months residing in opulence while informing my friends and family that I had accepted a position as a live-in housekeeper for an affluent family. We have arrived, he stated superfluously, releasing my wrist as the car came to a halt. My residence hasn't changed much since you last viewed it. Although perhaps you will observe I finally purchased that artwork you were so partial to, the one depicting the storm over the sea. The offhand reference to a dialogue from 6 years prior, a fleeting comment I had made while we lay entwined in his linens, unsettled me more than any overt threat could have. He hadn't merely remembered me. He had thought of me, perhaps even missed me. The building's lobby shimmered with marble and gold accents, the uniformed doorman nodding deferentially as we swept past. The private elevator demanded a key card, which Vittorio produced from his wallet, the doors sliding shut silently behind us. As we rose, I felt the heaviness of his gaze upon my profile. You are still beautiful, he said quietly. More so, perhaps. Motherhood suits you. My head snapped in his direction, eyes widening with alarm, and he smiled. It was a predator's smile that did not reach his eyes. Did you imagine I wouldn't investigate? Once I saw you this evening, and confirmed it was truly you. He shook his head slowly. Elena Romano, age 28, single mother to Sophia Romano, age 5. He paused with deliberation. Born 7 months after you disappeared from my life. The elevator doors parted directly into the penthouse foyer, yet I remained rooted to the spot, unable to advance, unable to draw breath. You do the math, he continued, placing a hand at the small of my back to steer me into the apartment. Even accounting for a premature birth, the timing is significant. The penthouse was just as lavish as I recalled, floor-to-ceiling windows displaying the glittering Chicago skyline and the dark expanse of the lake beyond. Minimalist furnishings in leather and chrome, a kitchen that would make professional chefs weep with envy. But now, instead of feeling like a fairy tale, it felt like a gilded cage. I have nothing to say to you, I managed, shifting away from his touch to place the kitchen island between us. No. Vittorio removed his suit jacket, draping it over a bar stool with practiced ease. Not even an explanation for why you allowed me to believe our child was deceased. You don't know that Sophia is yours, I countered, though the denial rang hollow, even to my own ears. Don't I? He moved to a sideboard, pouring 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal tumbler. Would you like me to list the evidence? The timing of her delivery? The fact that you have never filed for child support or listed a father on her birth certificate? The fact that she possesses my mother's eyes? Yes, I have seen photographs, Elena. Did you think I wouldn't be thorough? Fear clawed at my throat. You have been watching her. Protecting her, he corrected, taking a slow sip of his drink from a distance. Once I confirmed she existed, did you think I would leave my own flesh and blood vulnerable, unguarded, living in that unsafe neighborhood in a building with faulty wiring and inadequate security? We have managed just fine without your protection or your money, I said, anger flaring. I have kept her safe, healthy, and happy for 5 years. I have worked 2 jobs at times to ensure she never went without what she needed. I did that. Not you. Because you chose to, he said, his voice hardening. You chose to struggle, to deny her the birthright and security that was hers by blood. You chose to lie to me, to her, to everyone. He set down his glass with controlled precision. Tell me why, Elena. What could I have possibly done to make you believe that I would be so terrible a father that my child would be better off without me? The raw hurt beneath the anger in his voice caught me off guard. In all our time together, Vittorio had rarely shown vulnerability, had always maintained the cool control that had helped him rise to the top of Chicago's underworld. But now there was something almost pleading in his dark eyes. His eyes held a question that required nothing less than a brutally honest response. Finally, feeling the fight drain out of my body, I told him it wasn't about him personally. Not exactly. It was about the world he inhabited, Vittorio. The constant peril, the brutality, the adversaries lurking around every turn. I reminded him that the day I discovered I was pregnant was the same day an attempt had been made on his cousin's life. A car bomb that had missed its target and killed an innocent bystander instead. I wrapped my arms around my torso, the memory remaining vivid even after all the years that had passed. I recalled watching him organize the retaliation, witnessing the icy detachment in his eyes when he ordered that man's execution, and thinking to myself, is this really the environment I want for my child? To be raised amidst a phalanx of bodyguards and behind bulletproof glass, never understanding what normal life is, never truly being safe. He asked, his voice dropping to a dangerously soft register, if I had decided that poverty and growing up without a father were better alternatives. I countered that I had decided being normal and alive was preferable to being privileged and constantly at risk. I told him I wasn't sorry for making that choice, even if I was sorry for the pain it had inflicted upon him. Vittorio moved with sudden speed, closing the gap between us so quickly that I stumbled back until I hit the wall. He planted his hands on the wall on either side of my head, trapping me within his space without actually touching me, his face only inches from mine. He asked in a rough whisper if I knew what that had done to him. To believe he had lost a child he never even got the chance to see. To believe I was grieving alone somewhere because I refused to answer his calls. He told me he had men searching for me for months, Elena. He confessed that he thought I might have harmed myself in my grief. The genuine anguish visible in his eyes made my chest ache. This was the side of Vittorio that very few people ever got to witness. The man buried beneath the Mafia boss persona, the beating heart beneath the calculated exterior. I whispered that I was sorry, and I truly meant it. I told him I thought I was doing the right thing. His gaze dropped to my lips for a fraction of a second before he asked, now that he knew the truth, now that he knew his daughter existed, what I thought the right thing to do was now, Elena. Before I could formulate an answer, my phone began to ring in my pocket. It was the specific ringtone I had assigned to Mrs. Patel's calls. Panic flooded through me anew. She would only be calling at this hour if something was wrong with Sophia. I told him urgently that I needed to take the call, ducking under Vittorio's arm to put some distance between us. His expression darkened, but he stepped back, watching with narrowed eyes as I fumbled to retrieve my phone. I answered, trying to keep the alarm out of my voice, asking Mrs. Patel if everything was okay. Her worried voice came through the line, apologizing for calling so late. She explained that Sophia had woken up with a fever and was asking for me, poor thing. She had given her some children's Tylenol, but she believed Sophia needed her mother. I promised I would be right there, giving an estimate of 20 minutes tops. I ended the call to find Vittorio already shrugging back into his suit jacket. He demanded to know what was wrong. I told him Sophia was sick, that she had a fever, and I needed to get home immediately. I headed for the elevator, not caring whether he followed me or not. He pulled out his phone and stated that Antonio would drive us. I whirled around to face him, repeating the word us incredulously. I told him no, that he wasn't coming with me. His expression hardened into something implacable. He stated that his daughter was ill and he was coming with me, Elena. He added that this was not a negotiation. The elevator doors slid open, and he gestured for me to enter first. As they closed, sealing us together in the small compartment, the reality of my situation crashed over me like a tidal wave. After 6 years of keeping secrets and careful planning, it had taken less than 6 hours for my carefully constructed world to completely unravel. Now, Vittorio Castellano was about to meet his daughter for the very first time, and there was absolutely nothing I could do to prevent it. The Bentley cut through the night with quiet urgency, Antonio navigating the city streets with practiced efficiency. Beside me in the backseat, Vittorio was a study in controlled tension, his fingers drumming a rhythmless pattern against his knee. As we turned onto my street, which was lined with aging apartment buildings and small businesses featuring security grates over their windows, he asked what neighborhood this was. The contrast between this world and the gleaming penthouse we had just departed couldn't have been starker. I answered that it was Pilsen, watching his face as he took in the graffiti-tagged walls and the group of young men huddled on a corner, their eyes tracking our expensive vehicle with obvious interest. His jaw tightened. He stated that this was where I was raising our daughter. I replied that this was where we could afford to live, too worried about Sophia to engage in an argument about socio-economic realities. I insisted it was a good neighborhood with good people, adding that not everyone measured safety in terms of how many armed guards were stationed at the door. Antonio pulled up in front of my building, a 3-story walk-up with peeling paint but clean windows and a small, well-tended patch of flowers by the entrance, Mrs. Garcia's pride and joy. Vittorio instructed Antonio to wait there. As we exited the car, I noticed him scanning the street, his hand instinctively moving toward what I assumed was a concealed weapon beneath his jacket. I told him no one was going to attack us as I hurried toward the entrance, assuring him this wasn't the war zone he thought it was. The security door had a broken lock again, which drew a disapproving look from Vittorio as we entered the small lobby with its row of dented mailboxes. The elevator was perpetually out of order, so I led him up 2 flights of stairs to the 3rd floor, my concern for Sophia causing me to take the steps 2 at a time despite my exhaustion. Mrs. Patel opened her door before I could even knock, her grey hair pulled back in a loose bun, her face creased with concern. She began to say, "Elena, thank goodness, she's been asking for you," but her words died in her throat as she registered Vittorio's imposing presence behind me. Her eyes widened in alarm. I assured her quickly that it was okay, introducing him as an old friend who drove me home when he heard Sophia was sick. Mrs. Patel's sharp eyes darted between us, picking up on far more than I was comfortable with. She said she understood in a tone that made it clear she absolutely did see, perhaps more than I wanted her to. She told me Sophia was in the living room, explaining she had made a pallet on the couch so she could watch cartoons. I slipped past her into the apartment, acutely aware of Vittorio following close behind. Mrs. Patel's place was similar to mine, small and modestly furnished, but clean and homey, filled with the scent of spices and the colorful throws and pillows she loved to collect. And there, curled up under a bright purple blanket on the couch, was Sophia. Her dark curls were damp with sweat, her cheeks flushed with fever, and her small body looked unusually fragile. She called out "Mommy," her voice hoarse but relieved as she caught sight of me. She reached out with both arms, a gesture she had been making since infancy. I rushed to her, gathering her warm little body against mine, pressing my lips to her forehead to gauge her temperature. I soothed her, telling her Mommy was here now and asking how she felt. She complained that her throat hurt, burying her face against my neck, and that she felt hot and cold at the same time. I asked if Mrs. Patel gave her medicine while stroking her damp curls. She nodded against my shoulder, mentioning it was the yucky kind that tasted like fake cherries. I smiled and told her that was the kind that worked best, falling into our usual banter. Despite the tension thrumming through my body, I was acutely aware of Vittorio standing a few feet away, taking in every detail of this first encounter with his daughter. Sophia finally noticed him and whispered, asking who that man was. Her green eyes, so like mine but possessing an intensity that was purely Vittorio's, studied him with the unfiltered curiosity of childhood. I froze, my mind racing for an explanation that wouldn't be a complete lie but also wouldn't reveal too much. Before I could formulate a response, Vittorio stepped forward, his movements deliberately gentle, his expression softening in a way I hadn't seen since our time together years ago. He introduced himself, saying his name was Vittorio and that he was an old friend of her mother's. He told her that when he heard she wasn't feeling well, he wanted to make sure she got home safely. His voice was warmer than I had heard it all evening. Sophia regarded him with the solemnity of a child assessing an unfamiliar adult. After a moment, she decided that he talked funny. A surprised laugh escaped him, a genuine sound of amusement I had almost forgotten he was capable of. He explained that he grew up in Italy, which was why he had an accent. Sophia asked if it was like in Asterisk Lady and the Tramp Asterisk, referencing her favorite movie of the moment with the spaghetti. He agreed that it was exactly like that. I could see him cataloguing every detail of her face, every inflection in her voice, searching for himself in her and finding pieces of us both. I said we should get her home and into bed, gathering Sophia and her blanket into my arms. She was getting too big to carry easily, but I needed the comfort of holding her close as much as she needed the security of my arms around her. Mrs. Patel appeared with Sophia's backpack, explaining she had packed her things. She noted the fever started about an hour ago and thought it was just a summer cold, but suggested I might want to call the doctor in the morning if it hadn't broken. I thanked her for watching her, shifting Sophia's weight to accept the backpack. Vittorio took the bag from me, saying, "Allow me." Then, with a questioning look at me, he held out his arms for Sophia. He observed that I looked exhausted. "Elena." I hesitated. Every maternal instinct screamed against handing my sick child to a man who, despite being her biological father, was essentially a stranger to her. But my arms were already aching, and Sophia was looking at him with more curiosity than fear. I asked her if it was okay if Vittorio carried her, leaving the decision in her hands. She considered this for a moment, then nodded, adding the condition that she wanted her blanket. "Of course, Principessa *, Vittorio said softly, using the Italian endearment as he carefully took her from my arms, ensuring the purple blanket remained wrapped securely around her. The sight of my daughter cradled against the chest of her father for the first time sent a rush of conflicting emotions through me. Tenderness, fear, regret, and something deeper I couldn't name. We thanked Mrs. Patel again and made our way back to the stairwell. Sophia, who normally chattered incessantly, was quiet, her head resting against Vittorio's shoulder, her eyes heavy with fatigue and fever. He carried her with surprising gentleness, his large hand supporting her back, his steps measured and smooth to avoid jostling her. My apartment was across the hall and down 2 doors from Mrs. Patel's. I fumbled with my keys, acutely aware of how shabby our home would appear to someone like Vittorio. When I finally got the door open, I hesitated on the threshold, suddenly reluctant to let him into this most private space, the sanctuary where Sophia and I had built our life together, free from his influence and the dangers of his world. But Sophia was already half asleep in his arms, and her needs had to come first. I said preemptively that it wasn't much as I flipped on the lights, revealing our small living room with its worn but clean furniture. The pull-out couch where I slept still opened into a bed, and my textbooks from the community college nursing program were stacked neatly on the coffee table. If Vittorio was judging our modest living conditions, he didn't show it. His attention remained locked on Sophia. "Where is her room?" he asked in a quiet voice. "This way." I guided him down the brief hallway to the apartment's single bedroom, a space I had decorated as cheerfully as our limited budget would allow. The walls were painted a soft yellow, accented with decals of butterflies and flowers I had managed to find on clearance. The twin bed was covered by a colorful quilt my grandmother had stitched, while a collection of stuffed animals sat perched on a shelf above it. A small bookcase was overflowing with library borrows and treasures from yard sales, proof of Sophia's voracious appetite for stories. Vittorio laid her gently onto the mattress, his movements incredibly careful as he tucked the covers around her small form. She stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering open. "Will you be here tomorrow?" she asked him, her voice thick with sleep. The question hung heavy in the air between us, weighted with implications neither of us was prepared to address. Vittorio looked toward me, and for the first time since we had reunited, I detected genuine uncertainty in his expression. "Get some rest now," he said to Sophia, smoothly evading the question. "Feel better, Principessa." Her eyes had already drifted closed again, her breathing deepening as the mix of medication and exhaustion dragged her back toward sleep. We retreated from the room, leaving the door slightly ajar so I could hear if she called out during the night. In the living room, the atmosphere was charged with unspoken sentiments. Vittorio stood by the window, staring out at the city lights, his profile cut sharp against the darkness outside. "She has your smile," he said finally, his gaze still directed outward. "And your kindness. But she has my mother's eyes, and my chin." He turned to face me fully. "She is perfect, Elena." "Yes," I agreed softly. "She is." And you kept her from me for 5 years. The tenderness in his tone hardened, the hurt and anger rising to the surface now that we were alone. I sank down onto the edge of the pull-out couch, suddenly too drained to remain standing. I did what I thought was right. I still believe it was the right choice. Based on what? He demanded. A mistaken belief about who I am. About what kind of father I would be. He moved closer, looming over me. You had no right to make that decision on your own. I had every right, I countered, keeping my voice hushed to avoid waking Sophia. I am her mother. My job is to protect her, even if that means protecting her from her own father's world. And what about now? He asked, crouching down to bring his eyes level with mine, his face mere inches away. Now that I know about her, now that I have seen her and held her in my arms, do you think I will simply walk away? Do you think I will allow you to continue struggling to provide what I could give her with a snap of my fingers? I met his gaze steadily, despite the tears that threatened to spill over. What I think is that you need to leave now. It is late. I am exhausted, and my daughter is sick. Whatever happens next, we can figure it out tomorrow. For a moment, I feared he might refuse, that he might insist on staying and continuing this confrontation until he achieved his goal. It was his way in business, relentless pressure until his opponent conceded defeat. But instead, he nodded once and straightened up. Tomorrow, then. I will send a doctor in the morning to check on Sophia, and we will talk, really talk, about how we move forward from here. It wasn't a request, and I was too tired to argue. I followed him to the door, watching as he retrieved his phone to summon Antonio. At the threshold, he paused, turning back to me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. She asked if I would be here tomorrow. What should I have said, Elena? The honest question caught me off guard. I don't know, I admitted. I haven't figured out how to explain any of this to her yet. Then we will figure it out together, he said with the same calm certainty he applied to all his endeavors. Because I am not disappearing from her life, Elena. Or from yours. As the door clicked shut behind him, I leaned back against it, squeezing my eyes shut against the inevitable storm I knew was approaching. For 6 years, I had protected my daughter by keeping her father at a distance. Now, that distance had collapsed in the span of a single evening, and I had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But as I checked on Sophia one last time, brushing a kiss against her fever-warm forehead, I knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Block 4. True to his word, Vittorio sent a doctor the next morning. Not just any doctor, but a pediatric specialist who arrived at our door at precisely 8 o'clock, carrying a black medical bag that looked more expensive than all my furniture combined. Dr. Abernathy was a kind-faced woman in her 50s who treated Sophia with gentle efficiency. She diagnosed her with a simple throat infection and prescribed antibiotics, which she had already brought with her. Mr. Castellano insisted I bring everything you might need, she explained with a knowing smile as she handed me the medication and detailed instructions. He was quite concerned. The fact that Vittorio had found a top pediatrician willing to make house calls at dawn on a Saturday spoke volumes about his influence and his determination to be involved in Sophia's life. After the doctor departed, I gave Sophia her first dose of antibiotics and settled her on the couch with her favorite cartoon and a popsicle to soothe her sore throat. She was already feeling better, her fever reduced to a low-grade warmth, her energy returning in small bursts. Is Vittorio coming back today? She asked, carefully licking her cherry popsicle to avoid any drips. It was the question I had been dreading. Would you like him to? I countered, buying myself time. She nodded, her curls bouncing. He's nice, and he talks funny. And he called me Principessa. Her attempt at the Italian word made me smile despite my anxiety. Principessa, I corrected gently. It means princess. I know, she said with the casual confidence of childhood. He told me that in my dream. He said I was his little Principessa. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. You dreamed about him last night? Aha. He was in a castle with a big garden, and he was showing me all the flowers, and he said I could have a pony. She looked up at me with sudden hope. Can I have a pony, Mommy? We live in an apartment, sweetheart. Where would we keep a pony? She considered this problem with the gravity of a child faced with logistics in the bathtub. I laughed, grateful for the moment of normalcy. I don't think that would work out very well for the pony, or for us when we needed to take a shower. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was an unknown number, but I knew immediately who it was. Car downstairs in 30 minutes. Bring Sophia if she is feeling up to it. There is someone I want her to meet. No greeting, no signature, no room for refusal. Classic Vittorio. Part of me wanted to ignore the message to establish boundaries from the start, but a larger part of me knew that this conversation was inevitable. Postponing it would only heighten the tension, and Sophia was already asking about him. She is better, but still recovering, I texted back. Where are we going? The response came immediately. My mother's house. Sunday lunch is a tradition. My breath caught in my throat. Vittorio's mother, Vittorio Castellano, was a formidable woman by all accounts. During our relationship, she had been in Italy recovering from heart surgery. I had never met her, though Vittorio had spoken of her often and with rare tenderness. The idea that he wanted to introduce Sophia to her grandmother, to officially bring her into the Castellano family fold, sent a wave of panic crashing through me. That is moving very fast, I wrote. We have lost 5 years. I am not losing another day. The car will be waiting. I sat for a long moment, staring at the message, weighing my options. I could refuse, could draw a hard line in the sand, but that would only delay the inevitable. Vittorio had found us, and he was not going to walk away from his daughter now that he knew she existed. If I wanted any say in how Sophia was introduced to his world, I needed to be present for it. Sophia, I said, turning to her with a forced smile. How would you feel about meeting your grandmother today? Her eyes widened. I have a grandma? Like Mrs. Patel? Not exactly. This would be your father's mother. The words felt strange on my tongue. I had rarely spoken of Sophia's father to her, offering only the vaguest explanations when she asked. My daddy, she whispered, as if it were a magical word. Is Vittorio my daddy? The direct question caught me off guard. I had underestimated her perception, her ability to make connections. Or perhaps it was simply the instinctive recognition between blood relations, the same way Vittorio had immediately seen himself in her features. Yes, I admitted, seeing no point in lying now. Vittorio is your father. He has been away for a long time, but now he is back, and he wants to get to know you. And he wants you to meet your grandmother. Her small face went through a rapid succession of emotions, surprise, confusion, excitement, uncertainty. Does this mean I get to have a daddy now, like Maya from school? The innocent question broke my heart a little. For all my efforts to give Sophia a complete and happy life, I had never been able to fill the father-shaped hole in her world, the absence she noticed when her friends talked about their daddies, when fathers appeared at school events, when family trees were drawn in class. We are going to figure that out together, I said carefully. It is complicated, but what is important is that your daddy cares about you very much. Is that why he sent the nice doctor lady? I nodded. That is exactly why. Now, should we get dressed for lunch? We are going to a special place. Her excitement overrode any remaining lethargy from her illness as she bounced off the couch. Can I wear my blue dress? The one with the flowers? Perfect choice, I agreed, following her to her room to help her change. As I dressed in the bathroom afterward, I studied my reflection in the mirror. I chose my nicest outfit, a simple burgundy wrap dress I had found on clearance last year, reserved for job interviews and parent-teacher conferences. It was modest and flattering, though nothing like the designer clothes Vittorio had once draped me in. I swept my hair into a neat bun, applied minimal makeup, and slipped on my only pair of decent heels, armor of a sort against what was to come. Precisely 30 minutes after Vittorio's text, a sleek town car pulled up outside our building. The driver, another one of Vittorio's men whose name I couldn't recall, held the door open for us with a deferential nod. Miss Romano, Miss Sophia. His use of my daughter's name confirmed what I already suspected. Vittorio had briefed his entire organization about her existence. Sophia, for her part, was delighted by the fancy car with its leather seats and privacy partition. Are we rich now, Mommy? she whispered loudly as we settled in. No, sweetheart. This is just a special car for a special day, I explained, smoothing her dress and checking that her fever hadn't returned. She seemed perfectly healthy now, her cheeks pink with excitement rather than illness. The drive took us north, away from the city center and into the exclusive suburbs where Chicago's elite made their homes. We finally turned into a gated community, the security guard waving us through with immediate recognition. Beyond the gate, immaculate lawns surrounded stately homes set far back from the road. From the street, viewing the structures from the road. Every single one was a brazen exhibition of affluence and status. The vehicle maneuvered smoothly into a circular drive situated before a majestic stone estate, featuring ivy scaling its walls and immaculate gardens stretching out in every direction. It resembled something torn from the pages of a storybook, precisely the sort of residence where a princess might reside. Wow, Sophia exhaled, her nose flattened against the glass. Is this where Grandma lives? Yes, I replied, my mouth parched with anxiety. And this is the place where your father was raised. The front entrance swung open before we could even reach it, displaying Vittorio clad in informal attire, dark denim and a plain button-down shirt that somehow appeared more costly than any suit I had ever possessed. The sight of him dressed down, looking almost ordinary, triggered a sudden flood of recollections from our time together. Lazy Sunday mornings, those scarce intervals of tranquility amidst his professional obligations. However, what truly caught me off guard was the authentic smile that lit up his features when he spotted Sophia. It altered him completely, melting the rigid lines of power and control into something warm and approachable. Buongiorno, Principessa, he murmured, lowering himself to Sophia's eye level. Are you feeling better today? She nodded with enthusiasm. The doctor you sent gave me medicine that didn't even taste yucky. And Mommy says you're my daddy and we came to meet Grandma. His eyes darted to mine, acknowledging the revelation, before refocusing on Sophia. That is correct. Your grandmother has been incredibly eager to meet you ever since I told her about you last night. She has been cooking all morning. All your favorite Italian dishes. I don't know if I like Italian food, Sophia admitted. Seriously. I like pizza and spaghetti. Vittorio chuckled. Those are Italian, piccola, and trust me, your grandmother's cooking will make you adore many other Italian dishes. He stood to his full height, his gaze meeting mine. You look beautiful, Elena, he said quietly, his eyes sweeping over my simple dress with a level of appreciation that heated my cheeks. Before I could offer a response, a sophisticated older woman materialized in the doorway behind him. Lucia Castellano was in her late 60s, her black hair streaked with silver and swept into a timeless updo, wearing a simple yet obviously expensive dress and a single strand of pearls. Her eyes, the same intense dark orbs she had passed down to her son, immediately located Sophia. Dio mio, she breathed, one hand rising to cover her heart. E proprio bellissima. Vittorio stepped aside, creating space for his mother to advance. She moved with the dignity of a queen, yet her hands trembled slightly as she reached out for Sophia. Hello, little one, she said, her Italian accent heavier than Vittorio's. I am your Nonna Lucia. I have waited a very long time to meet you. Sophia, suddenly overcoming with shyness, pressed herself against my leg. Hello, she whispered, peering up at this regal woman with wide eyes. Lucia knelt down, seemingly unconcerned about her expensive garment touching the ground. You have your father's chin, she observed, gently tilting Sophia's face, and my eyes, the Castellano eyes. She looked up at me then, and I steeled myself for anger or accusation. Instead, I saw only a deep, aching understanding. She is perfect, Elena. Thank you for taking such good care of her. The simple gratitude, so unexpected, brought tears to my eyes. I had prepared for recrimination, for blame, not for this grace. Please come inside, Lucia continued, rising gracefully. Lunch is almost ready, and we have much to talk about. The interior of the Castellano family home was just as impressive as its exterior. Soaring ceilings, marble floors, and priceless artwork adorning the walls. But unlike Vittorio's minimalist penthouse, this place felt lived in and warm, with comfortable furniture and family photographs scattered among the antiques. Sophia's natural curiosity quickly overcame her shyness as Lucia gave her a tour, showing her the grand piano in the parlor. "Can I learn to play, Nonna?" Then the library with its floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. "Do you have any princess books?" And finally, the spacious kitchen where delicious smells wafted from bubbling pots and a fresh-baked cake cooled on a rack. Vittorio and I followed behind them, watching this instant bond form between grandmother and granddaughter. He stayed close to me, occasionally brushing his hand against the small of my back in a gesture that seemed both possessive and supportive. "Your mother is being very kind," I murmured as Lucia showed Sophia how to taste the pasta sauce with a proper wooden spoon. "She understands sacrifice for family better than most," he replied quietly. "She left her own family in Italy to follow my father to America, knowing what kind of life awaited her." He paused, watching his mother laugh at something Sophia said. "She doesn't blame you for trying to protect our daughter, Elena. But she will never let her go now that she's found her." "Neither will I." The simple declaration, delivered without threat or anger, nonetheless sent a chill through me. This was what I had feared from the beginning. The inexorable pull of the Castellano family drawing Sophia into a world I had tried so hard to keep her from. "Vittorio," I began, but was interrupted by Lucia calling us to the table. Lunch was a surreal experience. The four of us seated around an antique table laden with traditional Italian dishes. Sophia chattering happily between bites of the best food I'd ever tasted. Lucia sharing stories of Vittorio's childhood that made him alternately smile and wince. The summer sunshine streaming through leaded glass windows onto silverware that had probably been in the family for generations. It felt disturbingly normal, like we were just a regular family enjoying Sunday lunch at grandmother's house, not a criminal dynasty welcoming its newest member into the fold. After dessert, a tiramisu that Sophia declared was even better than birthday cake, Lucia took Sophia out to see the garden and the koi pond, leaving Vittorio and me alone at the table. "This doesn't change anything," I said as soon as they were out of earshot. "One lunch doesn't erase the reality of who you are, what you do." Vittorio sipped his espresso, his expression unreadable. "And what reality is that, Elena?" "You're the head of the most powerful criminal organization in Chicago," I said bluntly. "You have enemies, dangerous enemies. Your own cousin was nearly killed, remember? My business interests are diverse and well managed," he countered smoothly. "The more volatile aspects have been significantly reduced in recent years. I prefer legitimate enterprises now. They're more profitable and less prone to unwanted attention." I laughed without humor. "So, you've gone legitimate. Should we expect a press release about the Castellano family's reform? Don't be naive. The world isn't divided into good and evil as neatly as you'd like to believe." He set down his cup with precision. "But my priorities have evolved, and with Sophia in the picture, they will continue to evolve. Security and stability are paramount now for all of us." "All of us," I repeated, catching his implication. "Vittorio, we're not a family." "That's exactly what we are, Elena," he finished, his gaze intensifying. "What we've always been, whether you were ready to accept it or not. And now it's time to make it official." "Official," I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Vittorio reached across the table, taking my hand in his before I could pull away. His touch was warm and familiar, sending an unwelcome current of electricity up my arm. "Marriage, Elena. A proper family for Sophia. The life we should have had 6 years ago if you hadn't run." I withdrew my hand as if burned. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." His expression was resolute. Not a hint of doubt in those dark eyes. "Sophia deserves to grow up with both her parents. She deserves the Castellano name and all the privileges and protections that come with it." "And what about what I deserve?" I challenged, keeping my voice low despite the rising anger. "Do I deserve to be married to a man whose business associates carry guns to dinner meetings? Whose enemies might target his family? Whose idea of resolving conflict involves—" I stopped myself, aware that I was treading into dangerous territory. "Involves what, Elena?" he asked softly, dangerously. "Say what you're thinking." I met his gaze directly. Violence, control, manipulation, the very things I wanted to protect our daughter from. Rather than anger, a look of profound sadness crossed his features. Is that truly who you think I am? After everything we shared, I think it's a part of who you are, I said honestly. A part one chose to walk away from once, and a part I'm still not sure I can accept. Through the window, I could see Lucia and Sophia in the garden, my daughter's delighted laughter carrying faintly as she chased a butterfly between rose bushes. The sight twisted my heart, her innocent joy contrasted sharply with the weight of the conversation taking place inside. Look at her, Vittorio said, following my gaze. Look how happy she is. This is her birthright, Elena. This family, this legacy. Would you deny her that out of fear or pride? It's not pride, I protested. It's caution. Practical concern for her safety and well-being. I can protect her better than anyone else in this world, he said with absolute conviction. My resources, my connections. Nothing would ever touch her. And what about her soul, Vittorio? Her understanding of right and wrong. How do I explain to her what Daddy does for a living when she's old enough to understand? He leaned forward, his expression intense. By the time she's old enough to ask those questions, the Castellano empire will be entirely legitimate. I've been working toward that goal for years, moving investments into legal businesses, distancing myself from the old ways, for the future, for a family I hope to have someday. His voice softened. I never stopped thinking about you, Elena, about the child I thought we'd lost. The sincerity in his words shook me. It was one thing to imagine Vittorio as the cold, calculating crime boss driven solely by power and control. It was another to see him as he was now, a father determined to do right by his child, a man still carrying the torch for what we'd once shared. I need time, I said finally. This is all happening so fast. Yesterday, you didn't know Sophia existed. Today, you're proposing marriage and a complete upheaval of our lives. I can't make that decision in an afternoon. He nodded slowly, accepting this small concession. Time. I can give you that, but not distance. Not anymore. I want to be part of Sophia's life daily, not just on weekends or holidays. I've missed 5 years. I won't miss another day. What exactly are you proposing then? Joint custody to start. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box, placing it on the table between us. This is yours, regardless of your answer. Consider it a promise that I'm serious about my intentions. I stared at the box, afraid to open it, afraid of what it represented. Open it, he urged gently. With trembling fingers, I lifted the lid. Inside was not a ring, as I'd feared, but a key. A modern electronic fob attached to an elegant silver keychain. What is this? The key to your new home, he said simply. A townhouse in Lincoln Park. 3 bedrooms, a small garden, excellent security, and in the district with the best elementary school in Chicago. It's already in your name. I snapped the box shut. I can't accept this. It's too much. It's not a gift, Elena. It's what Sophia deserves, a safe, comfortable home in a good neighborhood. What you both deserve after years of struggle. His eyes held mine, unflinching. You can continue working if that's what you want. Finish your nursing degree. I will take care of Sophia's education and any other needs she might have. My only request is that I be permitted to act as her father in every meaningful sense of the word. And what about us? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What is it that you expect from me? His expression softened, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of the intense passion we had once shared burning in his eyes. Time, he replied. Simply the chance to remind you of what we used to have. To show you what we could potentially have again. Before I could formulate a response, the door to the garden swung open and Sophia burst into the room, her cheeks flushed pink with excitement. She was clutching a small, somewhat chaotic bouquet of flowers in her little hand. Mommy, Mommy, she cried out. Nonna showed me the secret garden tucked behind the big trees. There is a fountain there with real goldfish swimming in it, and she told me, I can come feed them whenever I want. She thrust the flowers toward me with a beaming smile. These are for you. Nonna helped me pick out the prettiest ones. I took the bouquet from her, feeling a lump of emotion rising in my throat at the sight of her innocent, unburdened happiness. "They are beautiful, sweetheart. Did you remember to thank Nonna?" "Naturally, she did," Lucia remarked as she followed Sophia into the room. Her sharp, calculating eyes immediately noticed the small velvet box sitting on the table and the thick tension hanging in the air between Vittorio and me. "She has such lovely manners, a true Castellano." The casual way she laid claim to my daughter sent a sudden jolt of possessiveness racing through me, but I forced myself to maintain a polite smile. "Thank you for showing her the garden. It sounds wonderful. This garden has been in our family's possession for 3 generations, Lucia said, her hand resting lightly, almost territorially, on Sophia's shoulder. "One day, it will belong to her, along with everything else." The heavy weight of inheritance and dynasty hung palpably in her words. This situation wasn't merely about Sophia having a father figure, it was about her assuming her designated place in a family with deep, tangled roots, complex obligations, and a legacy that stretched all the way back to Sicily. "Sophia Piccola," Vittorio said gently. "Why don't you go help Nonna bring out those special cookies she mentioned to you earlier? I need a moment to finish speaking with your mother." "Can I have one as soon as I bring them?" Sophia asked, already skipping toward the kitchen alongside Lucia. "Just one," I called after her, my maternal instinct kicking in automatically despite the surreal nature of the circumstances. "You have already had plenty of sugar today." Once they had disappeared into the kitchen, Vittorio turned his attention back to me. "1 month, he stated. "Give me exactly 1 month to demonstrate to you that this arrangement can work. Move into the townhouse. Allow me to spend time with Sophia. Let me prove to you that I am not the villain in this story. And if, after a month has passed, you still hold reservations, then we will negotiate terms that you are comfortable with: joint custody, separate lives, whatever it is you truly want." His jaw tightened slightly as he continued. "But I believe you will find that we are better together than we are apart, Elena. We always were." A memory flashed vividly through my mind, Vittorio and me in the kitchen of his penthouse, dancing slowly to old Italian records while sauce simmered on the stove. I remembered his arms feeling strong around my waist, the warmth of his laughter against my neck. We had been happy once, in those stolen moments between his business obligations and my work shifts, long before I had learned exactly what those business obligations entailed. 1 month, I agreed, though reluctantly. "But I am going to keep working at the restaurant." "I will have Marco promote you to manager," he interrupted immediately. "It would mean better hours and better pay." "No," I said, my voice firm. "No interference. I have built my life without your assistance for 6 years. I do not need you pulling strings for me now." He looked as though he wanted to argue the point, but instead, he nodded curtly. "As you wish. But know that the offer stands." Sophia and Lucia returned then, carrying a plate of delicate lemon cookies. My daughter was already munching happily on one, powdered sugar dusting her chin. The sight of her so completely at ease in this house, with these people who shared her blood, made me realize that regardless of my own reservations, Vittorio was right about one thing. He was her father, and she deserved the opportunity to know him. The rest of the afternoon passed in a strange sort of domestic tranquility. Vittorio took Sophia out to show her the treehouse his father had built for him when he was a boy. It was somewhat weathered by time but still sturdy. Lucia shared family photo albums with us, pointing out the undeniable resemblance between Sophia and Vittorio as a child. I watched it all unfold with a mixture of apprehension and reluctant warmth, witnessing my daughter bloom under the attention of her newfound family. By late afternoon, Sophia was fighting back yawns, the excitement of the day and her recent illness finally catching up with her. As we prepared to leave, Vittorio pulled me aside while Lucia was helping Sophia into her jacket. "I will have the townhouse ready for you by Wednesday," he said. "My men will handle the moving process. You won't have to lift a finger, Elena." I began to protest, but he cut me off by placing a gentle finger to my lips. "Let me do this, Elena. Not for you, if that makes it easier for you to accept, but for her." When his eyes met mine, they held a vulnerability I had rarely seen in him. "I have missed so much already." Her first words, her first steps. I can never get those moments back, but I can make sure that every moment from now on is the best it can possibly be." The raw emotion in his voice disarmed me. This was not the calculated maneuvering of a crime boss. This was the pain of a father who had lost years with his child. "Okay," I conceded softly. "But I will pack our personal things myself. Some things aren't just about efficiency." His lips curved into a slight smile. "As you wish." He hesitated for a moment, then added, "Will you tell her that I am taking her to a new home?" I nodded. "Tonight." She should have time to get used to the idea. That night, after tucking an exhausted Sophia into bed, I sat on the edge of her mattress, brushing the curls back from her forehead. "Did you have fun today?" I asked softly. "MHM," she mumbled sleepily. "Nonna is nice, and Daddy knows lots of stories." The word slipped so naturally from her lips, as if she had been saying it all her life. Perhaps, in a way, she had been waiting to say it, saving it for the man who would finally claim the title. "Sophia, sweetheart, how would you feel about moving to a new house? A bigger one, with your own big bedroom and maybe a garden like Nonna's, but smaller?" Her eyes flew open, suddenly alert. "Really? Can I paint my room purple?" I laughed softly. "I think that could be arranged." "Will Daddy live with us, too?" she asked. The innocent question landed like a heavy weight on my chest. "No, honey. Daddy has his own home, but he will visit us often, and we will visit him and Nonna. We are going to figure things out as we go." She seemed to accept this answer, her eyelids growing heavy again. "I'm glad Daddy found us," she murmured as she drifted toward sleep. I always wished for him when I blew out my birthday candles. Long after she had fallen asleep, I sat in the dimly lit kitchen, the key to the townhouse sitting on the table before me. My entire adult life had been defined by independence, by the fierce determination to make my own way without relying on anyone else. Even before Sophia, after my mother's death had left me alone at 19, I had prided myself on my self-sufficiency. Accepting Vittorio's help felt like surrendering that independence, like admitting that all my efforts had been insufficient. And yet, looking around our tiny apartment with its leaking faucet and temperamental heating, I couldn't deny that Sophia deserved better than what my waitress salary could provide. A text message lit up my phone screen. Asterisk, just checking that you both got home safely. Sophia was tired. Asterisk. The simple concern in Vittorio's message touched something deep inside me. For all his power and wealth, for all the danger that surrounded him, he was still the man who had once held me through the night when I received the news of my mother's cancer spreading. He was the man who had memorized exactly how I took my coffee and made it for me each morning during those 3 precious months we had shared. Asterisk, we're home. Asterisk, I replied after a moment. Asterisk, she is already asleep. Thank you for today. Asterisk. Asterisk, she was happy. Asterisk, his response came quickly. Asterisk, sweet dreams, Elena, to both my girls. Asterisk. I put the phone down, a complicated mixture of emotions swirling through me. 1 month to decide our future. 1 month to determine whether Vittorio Castellano had truly changed. Whether I could trust him with not just Sophia's safety, but her moral compass and her understanding of the world. 1 month to see if the feelings that had never quite died could grow into something sustainable, something real, or if they were merely echoes of a past best left behind. The townhouse was everything Vittorio had promised and more. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, highlighting the hardwood floors and crown molding. The kitchen gleamed with high-end appliances and marble countertops. Sophia's room had been painted a soft lavender, not quite the purple she had requested, but close enough to delight her, and furnished with a canopy bed that made her squeal with joy when she saw it. "It's a princess bed," she exclaimed, running from one corner of the spacious room to another, examining the built-in bookshelves that were already stocked with children's classics. She marveled at the window seat overlooking the small private garden and the walk-in closet that was larger than our entire bathroom in the old apartment. My bedroom was equally luxurious, featuring a king-sized bed and an ensuite bathroom with a soaking tub I could actually stretch out in. The third bedroom had been set up as a study, complete with a desk, a comfortable chair, and shelves filled with nursing textbooks, Vittorio's silent acknowledgement of my ambitions. It was perfect. Too perfect, in a way, designed to showcase everything I hadn't been able to provide on my own, everything Vittorio could offer with a snap of his fingers. But as I watched Sophia spinning in delighted circles in her new room, her happiness radiating like sunlight, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, we could find a middle ground. A way for Sophia to know her father and to benefit from the privileges of her heritage without being consumed by the darker aspects of the Castellano legacy. "Do you like it?" Vittorio asked from the doorway, having given us a few hours to settle in before coming to check on us. He leaned against the doorframe, looking casual in jeans and a grey Henley, appearing more like an ordinary father than a feared mafia boss. "It's beautiful," I admitted. "Thank you, Daddy." Sophia launched herself at him, and he caught her easily, swinging her up into his arms with practiced grace, as if he had been doing it all her life instead of just for a few days. "My room is perfect, and Mommy says we can get a fish for the study." "A fish, huh?" He raised an eyebrow at me over her head. "Just one." "We're starting small," I said with a slight smile. "Working our way up." "Well, I think that is very wise," he agreed, setting Sophia down gently. "Small steps. Speaking of which, I thought perhaps we might have dinner together tonight, to celebrate your first night in your new home." The question was directed at me, his eyes searching mine for permission. This was how it had been for the past few days, Vittorio careful to respect my boundaries while steadily increasing his presence in our lives. Lunch with Sophia, a phone call before bedtime, small gifts appearing without fanfare, a stuffed animal for her, a rare book on Italian cooking for me, remembering a casual mention I'd made years ago about wanting to learn my grandmother's recipes. "I think we would like that," I said, surprising myself with how easily the words came. "Wouldn't we, Sophia? Can we have pizza?" she asked hopefully. Vittorio laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "How about I cook for you instead? My mother's special recipe. I think you will like it. Even better than pizza." As he made his way toward the kitchen, already rolling up his sleeves with a comfortable sense of familiarity, I felt a distinct shift inside me. It wasn't exactly surrender, but perhaps the onset of acceptance, the recognition that strength sometimes meant allowing oneself to trust, to hope, and to believe in the possibility of transformation. 1 month, I reminded myself. 1 month to determine if this fragile new arrangement could turn into something permanent, something real. 1 month to see if the man I had once loved with such ferocity could truly become the father Sophia deserved, and if I dared to hope the partner I had always longed for him to be. As Sophia skipped after him, chattering with excitement about her new room, I found myself following them, drawn in by the simple domestic scene unfolding within my new kitchen. Vittorio stood at the counter, sleeves pushed up to display strong forearms, his hands confident as they kneaded the dough. Sophia sat on a stool beside him, watching in fascination, while the golden afternoon light cast them both in a warm glow. For the first time in 6 years, I permitted myself to imagine a future where we were truly a family, not perfect, and not without complications, but together. A future where my daughter knew her father's love, and where the man I had never quite stopped loving found redemption through that love. Where the lies and fear that had kept us apart gave way to honesty and trust. It was too soon for certainty. The road ahead would be complex, filled with negotiations and compromises. But as Vittorio looked up, catching my eye across the kitchen with a smile that still made my heart skip a beat, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel when I walked into Rossoscuro for my shift just days ago. Hope.